Over the past few years, I've watched Ford's CEO make some absolutely terrible decisions that has set Ford back for years. First, he cut corners in quality, leading to the most recalls in Ford's entire history. Then he raised prices by tens of thousands of dollars on every single pickup truck and got rid of one of the most affordable cars that they ever sold, the Ford Focus. But not every decision Ford's CEO has made has been a complete disaster. He made sure to keep the muscle car alive by continuing to produce the Mustang, all while Dodge killed the Challenger and Chevy threw the Camaro into the trash bin. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the things Ford has done completely wrong over the past few years, and a few things that Ford has actually done right that kind of gets me excited about the future of Ford in America. So let's get right into it. So you might think that I hate Ford since I criticize them quite often in my videos, but the truth is actually the opposite. I'm actually a really big fan of what Ford is doing with some of their vehicles, and I've actually owned some of the best Fords that you could buy over the past few years. At one point, I owned a second-gen F-150 Raptor, and that was probably one of the best trucks that I've ever owned, and I don't have much to compare it to because I think the last truck I owned was like a single-cab V6 Dodge Ram a long time ago, back like after high school. But the Ford F-150 Raptor just absolutely ripped, and it was such a fun truck. And at one point, I actually owned one of the best Ford Mustangs that they ever made, and it's definitely not this one. I had the privilege for about a year of owning a Mustang GT350R. It was all black, had the carbon fiber wheels, the bucket seats, and the exhaust note. I got so much enjoyment out of that car, and to this day, I think the GT350R and even the regular GT350 is one of the best Ford Mustangs that have ever been made. But I do think the Mustang has gone a bit downhill since the GT350R and even the same generation of GT500. I think there's a few things that I love about the new Mustang and some things that I really just don't like that I think has kind of brought it downhill. But we'll get more into the Mustang a little bit later. I want to start with a few things that Ford has done wrong over the past few years, and then we'll jump into the things that I think they've done right, which will bring us back to the Mustang and about one or two other vehicles. So one of the first things Ford has done wrong over the past few years might or might not come as a surprise to you depending on which camp you're in. But the F-150 Lightning, I think, was a good experiment by Ford just to test the market on how people would respond to a fully EV, basically Ford F-150. And when they first came out, the hype was huge. People were buying them like crazy the first year or so. And then after that initial hype, just like the Cybertruck and just like most other electric vehicles that come out, the hype quickly died down. And that's the same story here with the F-150 Lightning. The hype quickly died down on this truck. Dealerships just became overwhelmingly flooded with these trucks. And now they sit on the lot way longer than they need to. And because they're sitting on the lot and they're not selling as quickly as they used to, you can actually get them for quite a significant discount. And it's one of the biggest discounts on any truck, except for like a Ram diesel that had like 20 grand off about a year ago. But this discount comes really close to that. And I was actually shocked when I checked it out. They don't have too many here because Ford actually is not going to be building or selling these anymore. And basically, these are 2025 models. It's pretty much going to be the last year for the F-150 Lightning. But I want to show you this specific model because as you see in the window, this one just shows that it's got a discount of like $5,000. But I found one over here that has like a much bigger discount. But this one right here is the Lightning, and it's the Flash Edition. And so I'll show you the MSRP and what options are on it, and then I'll show you the discount total. It's kind of crazy. Look at all this dust. It's really dirty as well. It hasn't rained in like a week or two. This is again a 2025, and the MSRP is kind of insane at $74,595. But they have a tag here that says scan me, and so I did scan it on my phone, and the discount surprised me. So as you can see on this screen, the MSRP is $74,595. There's a discount of $8,000, then a retail customer cash of $5,000, another retail bonus cash of $1,000, and then an EV public charging credit of $2,000. That brings a total of $16,000 off of this truck from MSRP. And that just shows you how desperate Ford is getting to just get rid of these Lightnings, that have just been sitting on these lots with nobody buying them. So the sales price ends up being about $58,000, which I wouldn't call that super cheap, but $16,000 off of a Lightning makes it one of the cheapest ones you can buy of the higher to mid-tier trim levels. So that brings me to the next mistake that I feel like Ford has made with one of their trucks, and that's with one of their cheaper trucks. And it's pretty much the cheapest truck that Ford sells right now. And it's a good little truck, but there was some promises made by Jim Farley that were just completely broken. And obviously, since I'm talking about the cheapest truck you can buy at Ford, that's going to be the Maverick. When Ford first introduced the Maverick, they were telling people it was going to be like a $20,000 to $25,000 truck, and starting more at the $20,000 range. So people were getting really excited about the possibility that they could actually get a truck, granted not full size, but at least something that can do a little bit of truck stuff for around $20,000. However, as the Maverick progressed in development, the prices just started going higher and higher and higher, and the promise of that $20,000 starter pickup truck completely disappeared. This is actually the most I have ever seen at one time at this dealership, because they just don't have them on this part of the lot. You can see there's an entire row right here, and then as I walk through, there's another row stacked all the way to the end there and all the way there. But they not only have Mavericks in this spot, there's another section in that far corner of the lot on the left, and then in that far right front corner by the main road over here on the right side in front of the dealership. And so they are absolutely stacked with Ford Mavericks, and I want to show you one of the reasons why. This is an XL trim level. It's one of the lowest trim levels that you can get. However, you might get some sticker shock when you see the prices, and this is pretty much the cheapest one that I have found on the lot right now. I haven't found like a super stripped out base model. That's actually been really hard to find, the super stripped out base model. So I want to break into this video for just a minute here, because I want to show you something cool that I'm working on for the future of this channel. So I'm actually building a little YouTube studio here in my second bedroom. You can see I'm putting a bookshelf here, and then I got a desk here that I'm going to be able to sit right here. But there was one problem I ran into the other day. So this shelf was actually not tall enough, and it showed like the wall in the frame. So I got all these bricks down here and put it on this wood plank to raise it up. Well, I had to transport those bricks that I got from Home Depot in my Jeep, and it would have made a really big mess, except for today's sponsor, Last Fit. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I had to throw those bricks in the back of my Jeep, and let me show you what that did. Let's open this up here, lift this gate right here, and as you can see, I was moving a few things as well, but as you can see, there's concrete dust and little pebbles from it that you can see I can wipe them off here. And it made a little bit of mess here on the carpet in the back right here, but that's because this is where like the door closes on this part of the door. But I have the Last Fit floor mat that covers pretty much the entire floor that's exposed here, and then it goes all the way up to the back and covers a little bit of the carpet on the back seat. So as you can see here, this Last Fit cargo area protector, it covered this whole section, and the pebbles are stuck in like these little grooves here, so they're not rolling around, and then the dust didn't get all over the carpet. So let me show you what it looks like underneath the Last Fit cargo area protector. So if I lift this right here, you can see it is perfectly clean under this. So all this mess from the center blocks that you see was caught by this Last Fit cargo area protector. So having this Last Fit cargo area protector in the back of my Jeep really saves me from what would have been a cleaning nightmare. And Last Fit doesn't just have cargo area protectors. I also got the floor mats, and you can see here that there's so much dust and dirt and leaves and stuff that just got stuck here in these little grooves. So if I lift up the bottom here, you can see that the carpet underneath these Last Fit floor mats are perfectly clean and everything's protected. Last Fit has floor mats for pretty much any car, truck, or SUV. So if you want to protect your vehicle from dirt and damage, then I highly recommend you grab some of these floor mats or cargo area protection from Last Fit. Just click one of the links below in the description to grab a set for yourself. And make sure to use code AUGD1 at checkout for an 18% discount. Thanks to Last Fit for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. So right now, the least expensive Maverick, I don't know if I'd call it cheap, but the least expensive Maverick I could find on this lot. Now, I will say they are selling better than the F-150 Lightning, because most of these, if not all of them, are actual 2026 models. This is a 2026 XL all-wheel drive with the 2.5 liter hybrid which makes it a little bit more expensive of a lower trim level, but it still has the Steelies. It just has the hybrid powertrain added to it. The rest is cheap. You get the standard screen and the cloth interior and all that stuff. But you would think, okay, Maverick with just an engine option, that's gonna be like 28 grand. No. The MSRP is $32,855. Now, since they are loaded up with these Mavericks, there is a discount. It's not as much as you would think, but it does bring the price down to under 30 grand. So I scanned the little sticker and it brought up the same kind of list that you saw in the Lightning. However, there's not a lot of incentives. There's just a dealer discount and nothing else from Ford. But you get $4,000 off with this dealer discount, bringing it to $29,450. Now, the dealer did add on $595 worth of some random protection package, as they call it. And I'm thinking it may be something to protect the interior or the paint. And there's also like, if little defects come up, I'm assuming like rock chips or anything they might fix for that $595. I don't know exactly what it covers. It's not very specific. And again, I'm not going inside to find that out. But as you can see, it took a $4,000 discount to get the Maverick under 30 grand on the XL model with all-wheel drive and the hybrid powertrain. I think if you took that off, you drop it another $3,000. So that would still put it over $25,000 for the lower trim level Maverick, which I think is pretty insane. I definitely know if they got it around 20 to 25 and just kind of kept it around there on a more base level, they would sell a lot more. And if you want to jump into a higher trim level, I want to show you why buying a high trim level Maverick actually doesn't even make sense. Right here, we've got a Lariat trimmer and then another standard Lariat with honestly one of my favorite colors right now. So let me show you how much this Lariat costs right here, which is $40,875. And then the trimmer, this one right here, I do think this is a cool package. I like the more aggressive wheel and tires. And I like that the bumpers just kind of stay plastic and they've got a hitch on it. It just looks like a tough little Maverick. However, this one is even more expensive at $42,690. And once you get into that $42,000, $44,000 range on a Maverick, it just doesn't make sense anymore. And let me show you why that is. So the Ford Maverick is a unibody truck, which in my personal opinion, doesn't really make it a truck at all. The same thing with the Honda Ridgeline, unibody truck, just kind of out for me. And at a $42,000 range, that opens up the budget to something even better that's actually a real truck. Something like the Ford Ranger. This is a Ford Ranger Lariat right here in black, a little bit more off-roady, but not a trimmer. And as you can see here, it's $50,000, so about $8,000 more than the Maverick. And you actually get a real body-on-frame pickup truck that also just has a little bit bigger of a bed and a lot more room in the cabin than the Maverick does for about 8 grand more. And of course, you don't have to go to a Lariat. You can get something like this STX right here, which honestly, it's still four-wheel drive and it's a decent trim level. And honestly, I think the STX is the way to go. Here's the shocker here. This is actually about the same price of that Maverick, if not a tiny bit less. $40,175 for a 2025 Super Crew 4x4 XL Ranger with a 2.3 liter EcoBoost and a 10-speed auto. So for the same price as that high-end Maverick, you can get an STX trim level of the Ranger, which is honestly better, more spacious, and it's a real truck. Now, of course, like this one here, they do get around 50 grand for the Lariat, but it's really not that much nicer. Cloth seats, honestly, are totally fine, especially for about 10 grand less. But of course, there is one Ranger that stands out and is a lot more expensive, and that's the Ranger Raptor. They don't have one here, they used to, but it sold really quick. Those are really popular trucks, and I'll drop that clip in here real quick in case you missed that Raptor Ranger in another video. I think it's worth you seeing. Now, as we're still on the small truck train, I actually want to show you something that I think is pretty cool. I would never buy one because it's way too much for what you get, but I want to show you the most expensive Maverick, and this came out like a few months ago, and it's more of like a street truck. It's called the Lobo. This is a pretty cool looking little street truck. It's just still kind of pricey, but here's the interesting thing. It's actually around the same price as that Lariat trimmer of the Maverick. So this is the 26 Lobo all-wheel drive and has a 2-liter EcoBoost engine, and the automatic, and it's $43,235. And that's just about as expensive as a Maverick can get right now. But again, I would take the Ranger over this any day, just because you have more room. It's a real truck. It's got body on frame. I don't need to repeat that already. I think it's been said enough. But now it's time to move on to one of the other big mistakes that I think Ford has made, and it's with their most popular truck. And then we'll move on to the stuff that I'm personally excited about, things that I think Ford has done right, and some things in Ford's future that a lot of people, I think even you watching, could actually get excited for, because they might bring back cars, and specifically one of their most popular cars that they've ever made. Well, this probably comes as no surprise to you, but I think one of the biggest mistakes that Ford has made over the past few years, and it's not just Ford that's guilty of this, it's pretty much every truck manufacturer, including Chevy, GMC, Toyota, and yes, of course, even Ram, is that the full-size truck prices have gotten absolutely out of control, and they show no signs of slowing down, as every single year they get more expensive by $1,000 to $3,000 every single year, and these prices have gotten so ridiculous that the only way that dealerships are selling these trucks nowadays is to give crazy amount of discounts to bring the price back into something that's more realistic, I would say, but it's still way too much. And then they have to give incentives like 1%, 2% APR through like Ford Credit, because banks can't finance it that cheap. So it's got to be like Ford Credit or Chrysler Financial, etc., etc. And let me show you exactly what I'm talking about with these prices and how crazy they've gotten and the discounts that have to be put on these trucks. And I want to start with one of the most insanely overpriced, at least in my opinion, Fords that you can buy. While in my opinion, it's one of the best looking packages that you can get, it's also insanely overpriced, and that's the F-150 trimmer package. And let me say something else. For this price, you don't even get a bed liner. It's just naked paint, which honestly is kind of annoying because this is expensive. I don't know if you've looked at prices lately, but this will make you probably crap your pants. MSRP is $80,715. $80,000, and it's not even a Raptor, which is like $92,000, $93,000. For like 12 grand more, you could get a Raptor. But let's see if it's got a discount with this little scan here sticker. I'm kind of curious how much they have off of this truck. All right, I was kind of having hopes that it would be like 16 grand off like the Lightning, but it's not, because there's still people out there, at least at the end of last year, that were buying these trucks for these insane prices. And I think it's because of the interest rates. Maybe that people just needed a truck and the interest rate was too good to pass up or whatever. I don't know what goes through the head of someone that pays 80 grand for an F-150 trimmer package. If you bought one of these in the last few months, comment below. Tell us what was going through your mind at the time. But as far as discounts go on this trimmer package, you're looking at $8,500 off from the dealership on their discount, $2,000 retail customer cash, bringing it down to $70,250. So a total of $10,500 off of MSRP. In my opinion, I still think that's way overpriced. If you get one used that's like a few thousand miles on it, you're gonna get it even less than that. You will pay a higher interest rate. So maybe that's why people are buying these new ones, because maybe the interest rate is good enough to where the payments are lower than buying a 1-year-old trimmer. But that will have to be investigated a little bit deeper. I want to know who's keeping this truck market alive, because Ford actually had record F-150 sales last year. So despite higher prices, the sales of the F-150 have continually been going up ever since they started getting more on the lot in 2021, 2022. So that needs a further investigation. Which one of you is keeping this truck market alive while watching my videos and still complaining about prices? You're hiding, and I know you're here. I can see you watching right now. But anyways, we'll find the guilty ones later. But I want to see if I can find like the cheapest F-150, and then we'll move on to some of the things that I think Ford has done right over the past few years, and a vehicle that they're bringing back that I think you'll get excited about. And right here in front of me is an F-150 XLT, one of the lower trim level packages, and then like an STX is usually a little bit cheaper, and they have one right next to it. So we can compare these straight up. So MSRP of this F-150 XLT is $65,929. And it is a 2026 model. And I already scanned the code. You get $6,000 off from the discounts on this truck, bringing it down to about $59,000. Honestly, this should be a $40,000 truck. Maybe 45 is pushing it, but that's realistically, in my opinion, it should be a $45,000 truck. But if you want to pay 59, that's on you. But what about the STX? Now we're getting to something more reasonable when it comes to a new truck, into the level that I feel like if I needed a truck, I might buy this one. So this is a 2026 F-150 4x4 STX trim level. It does have the smaller V6 EcoBoost with the 2.7 liter, and it's $50,940. And I already scanned the QR code, that little guy on the window that we've been looking at. The discount is less than the XLT, but it's still cheaper. With a $4,000 discount, it brings it to $47,535. Around that $45,000 level to, if I needed a new truck for whatever reason, an STX is probably the one that I would buy. Now, if I was gonna tow, I'd probably want the bigger V6 engine or the V8, because you can still get the Coyote V8 as an option. Most of the ones you'll see on the lot are the EcoBoost engines though, but every now and then, it's pretty rare, but you might find a V8 on the lot. They're kind of shoved in the middle somewhere. So this STX is basically the cheapest F-150 that you're gonna find right now. And honestly, it doesn't really get much cheaper than that. But enough about Ford's failures over the past few years and the things that I think they've kind of messed up and the mistakes Jim Farley has made. Let's go into some of the vehicles that I think they've done right and something cool that might be coming out. Now, one of the things that I do think Ford did a really great job on is the Ford Bronco. I think this is one of the best decisions that Ford has made in the past few years, is bringing back the Ford Bronco. And not only did they keep the retro styling, they also have base models that start at a pretty reasonable price, especially when you compare it to the prices of these trucks. And when it comes to retro designs, in the last year or two, they brought back a couple of these retro, like white grills, white wheels, and the white top with like this stripe going down the side with the old school Bronco writing. And they're in some pretty cool colors as well. You've got this kind of gray matter blue kind of thing going on here. And then they have a really, really old school color that I like. They have this baby blue old school Bronco color with the white grille, the white top, and also the white wheels down here, which look honestly pretty sick. But they'll be really hard to keep clean because they're going to show every speck of dirt. But sometimes you make sacrifices to look cool in your vehicle, you know. And it's not only the retro versions that are getting cool colors. There's this kind of desert sandy dune color that came out on this Badlands. There's another kind of grayish blue color here that's a little bit darker than the retro one. They've got a black retro. And then as we go down the line, we're getting into some lower trim levels here that are still, I think, good buys, and they're gonna be a lot less money than the higher trim levels. So let me show you how much a high trim level goes for, and then we'll look at a cheap one. And I wanna see how these prices compare to the F-150s. Now, high trim level, obviously gonna be pricey, but the interesting part is these don't get as expensive as like the trimmer F-150. And this is gonna be more fun than an F-150 trimmer, hands down. So this is a Bronco Badlands, one of the higher trim levels that you can get without being a Raptor, of course. And they do have a couple of those, which I wanna show you. And if you remember, that F-150 trimmer was $80,000 freaking dollars. But anyways, the MSRP of this is $68,155. So $12,000, not $20,000 less. However, they've got some discounts on this as well that does bring it down to that level. And this one specifically right here, you got $5,750 dealer discount and then like a $2,500 customer cash and an SUV spike retail bonus cash, probably because they're selling a little bit slow at the beginning of the year, which is pretty typical in January. So an extra grand off, bringing it to $63,670. And while that's not super cheap, they do have less expensive ones if you don't want to go all out. Now, I don't see a base model because a base model with steel wheels does exist, but I'm not seeing one here. Sometimes they randomly just pop up in different spots Right now, the big bend is kind of the big seller for Ford right now. You get a little bit more in these than like buying the base model, and honestly, it might be worth it. So for this white big bend, you're looking at $49,215. So about 50 grand for the mid-tier trim level, which if you don't need all the hardcore off-roady bits and you're just kind of running around on some trails that don't require rock crawling, this is the one to get. And honestly, this will get you through 90% of any trail in Moab, Utah, or Colorado. So the Ford Bronco is one of the better decisions that Jim Farley has made over the past few years. And bringing this back was really, really cool. So there's another decision that they made that I think is pretty cool, and it's Bronco related. And then we'll move on to another decision that I'm really happy Ford did. There's some things I like and dislike about these decisions, but at least it's here. And then we'll move on to something new that they might be bringing back. But I want to talk about something with the Bronco that I think is really cool, kind of expensive, but if you got the money, you should definitely get one. Now, I want to talk about a Bronco that is kind of expensive, but I'm glad Ford did it, because in a world of boring SUVs, Ford is just coming out with something cool. And honestly, because of the 392 Wrangler, they kind of had to put this out. And that's going to be the Bronco Raptor. I think there's some amazing things about this one. And the interesting part about some of these newer ones is they've gone ahead and painted the fender flares, the body color, and they also have available that you can do the body color top as well, which I do think looks really, really good. But even though this thing is like 90-something thousand dollars, I'm glad Ford is making a Raptor version. The only thing I dislike is, I understand they have a bunch of twin turbo motors and they just shove it in here and crank up the boost and they give it more power. But I do wish they had a V8 option for this. They could have done a V8 with a supercharger. Even if it was a 5-liter Coyote with a supercharger on it, I think that would have increased sales of the Raptor even more. They're selling okay, but a lot of times these sit on the lot for several months before they're gone, and they always have to give a discount to get rid of them. But I'm still glad they have the Raptor. I think it's pretty cool. Anyways, moving on from the Bronco, I want to talk about one thing that really has gotten me excited about Ford lately, and I'm glad they have this car, and I'm glad they're still making it, because, you know, Ford has gotten rid of all the other cars. There's no Focus, there's no Taurus, and that kind of gets rid of cheaper, economical options, because even though they have the Maverick, which can get better gas mileage, you're still not going to beat the fuel mileage of a small, lightweight Ford Focus. You know, it's going to be tough. You could do a hybrid Focus and get 38 miles per gallon like Toyotas. You know, Toyotas can get like 38 to 40 miles per gallon in their hybrid cars, and there's nothing from Ford that even comes close to that. And that's why Toyota is always dominating the top 10 of the most selling, because they make cars that are really good on gas mileage. They make SUVs, they kept the cars, they kept the Camry, they kept the Corolla, and there's no economical entry-level stuff at Ford anymore. So with that said, they do have one car that they managed to keep, and over the past few years, some say it's gotten better. There's some things that make it worse, but I'll let you be the judge. Let me show you what I'm talking about. And of course, that car I'm talking about should be pretty obvious to you, because it's the only car Ford makes anymore, and that is the Ford Mustang. And as you can see here, we've got an entire row of Ford Mustangs. And again, like the Maverick, this is the most Ford Mustangs that I've ever seen on their lot at one time. This dealership is actually stacked at the beginning of this year, and January sales into February, it's just kind of slow, so they might be sitting here for a little while. But there's some good and bad things about the new Mustang, and I want to talk about the good, and then really, honestly, there's only one thing that I don't like about the new Mustang. Everything else I really like, but one thing just really grinds my gears, and I feel like it's cheap, lazy, and looks incredibly stupid. So first, the good things. If you get a higher trim level like the GT, you get a really cool bumper, you get these nice wheels with Continental tires, you get a little hood scoop thing in the front that's actually functional, and of course you can never go wrong with the 5-liter Coyote V8 with the badge on the side. Now, the positive things that I do like about this Mustang. At first, I was questioning the look of it, but the more I see them in person, the more I like the front end, I like the side profile. It's not as Camaro-ish as people first let it off to be, because the Mustang and Camaro both had wide hips, and the taillights have grown on me as well. I still like the taillights of the previous version better. I don't like this deep cut as much, but I no longer hate it. And of course, there's different trim levels. Like this 60-year anniversary has some pretty cool wheels, and I like the stripe down the side. But that brings me to, actually there's two things that I don't like about this, and this is a lot of people, which is probably, I think, why this is the slowest selling Mustang ever. I think these two reasons keep people from buying it, especially Mustang fans. First one is the price. These things have gotten incredibly expensive, and I think this 60-year anniversary is a good example of Ford just going nuts with their pricing. This is a 2025 GT automatic, and it's $62,160. Over $60,000 for a Mustang GT is insane. That's almost 10 grand more than the previous generation Mustang, and honestly, people are having a hard time swallowing that pill. Now, you can get something less expensive and a lower trim level, but when buying a sports car, I don't see the point. This is a EcoBoost 2.3 liter with a 10-speed auto. Sure, it's $43,600, a lot less than a GT, but buying an EcoBoost Mustang would just make me really depressed. If I buy a sports car, I want a true sports car experience, and that would be the Mustang GT, or something even crazier like the new supercharged Mustang that just came out. That would be really cool as well, even though it's even more expensive. But at least at minimum, a manual GT would be the best thing to buy. It's just so expensive. The second thing that bothers me, and I think a lot of people were bothered by this, and you can see it right here by looking in the front. These screens just plopped on the dash with no design, no inspiration, just completely lazy. Honestly, it kind of pisses me off. I just feel like it's just lazy design. It's cheap. It's a way for them to save money while charging you more for a car. And this doesn't scream Mustang to me. The two separate ones look absolutely like trash. You can get a full-size screen that doesn't have the gap in the middle, like this one here. But in my opinion, this is terrible. This pisses me off. I don't like it. It strays from the classic double hump Mustang look, and it's a reason I would never buy one. I wouldn't even buy the most expensive, coolest trim level. Even if it drove well and was fast, I would buy something else. But anyways, enough about the Mustang. Let's move on from there, because the last thing I want to talk about is a car that Ford got rid of that I've seen a bunch of articles and rumors that they might bring back. And there's been rumors, and even Jim Farley has discussed it. So yeah, Ford might be bringing back the Taurus. So I want to know what you think about that. Do you think Ford should bring back the Ford Taurus? Do you think it would add to their lineup in a really good way? And do you think it would drive sales of cars back to Ford and take some of that away from Toyota? I think if they came out with like a really good hybrid Ford Taurus that was right around the same price and could compete with like the Toyota Camrys, I think that'd be really good for Ford and also make Toyota sweat a little bit. So anyways, that's it for today's video. I'm Matt with MotorFeed, and if you made it this far into the video, please hit that like button so more people see it. Subscribe to the channel so you get our next videos. And again, I'll see you in the next one.